Hello, in this video I will be talking about CSS Borders. Okay, so let's dive right in here. So one of the tags that we had previously discussed was div. So I think I mentioned a couple of times that div starts to become a little more important as we start going into further into CSS based topics. So let's start off with a div. Let's give it a style so we know we're working with a CSS style, and just so we don't forget, just a general tip, a lot of times what I do is fill in the boilerplate stuff and then fill in exactly what I'm trying to do. So in this case I just made a div without any style and made sure I closed it that way I didn't forget. Okay, so let's I'll begin by showing you exactly what a border is. So let's start to type, and actually I'm going to hit the backspace here a little bit because there's a whole bunch of, and we'll use Dreamweaver to our advantage. There's a whole family of CSS properties that start with the name border, and then you can see them all here. There's a bunch of them. So what I'm going to start off with is the basic usage. So let's do 1 pixel px, and then we're going to say it's going to be solid. Okay, so what did I do here? I have a div, and I'm going to give it a border. And so I'll click over here. You can see it has its border. And so that doesn't really help us a lot without any text. So okay, so what we can see is, I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on the video, but as always, I would go ahead and try to follow along and type in this into your own Dreamweaver so you can see a little bit better. But so what we have is a border around our text that's 1 pixel and it's solid. And so you can change the sizes of these. That's thicker if we set it to 5 pixels. We have some other options. There's solid. Let's see if it gives us suggestions. I'll be honest, most of the time I use solid, but I think dotted is an option. Something similar, yeah, dotted. But so just so you know what that is. And so what we'll be using that for is, let me set it back to 1 pixel solid. A lot. You can almost think of it as a tool to help you in debug. So maybe you have a web page that you're having layout issues, and this will be one of the next videos I do is layouts. So I wanted to introduce you to this and understand what happens with borders. And you just can't get things to line up correctly, or you can't get them to show up on the page exactly the way you want. And so one of the first things you'd want to do is throw a border on it, and you know, the final website you'll probably end up removing it or modifying the border somehow. But so let's create a second one here. Create actually a couple more. Okay, and so you can see each one of these has a, and you know what we can do? Just so there's a little, so you can see this a little bit better. Throw in a couple of line breaks. Okay, so you can see, and so if you're trying to get your web page to line up, it makes it a lot easier when you have that border to visually see, you know, your text is only using up so much of the div, but as far as the browser is concerned, and when it's laying it out, it's using that full amount. So let's take it away here. And well, that's not the greatest example. Let's see it in a browser, and it'll make a little more sense. Because as you can see, a Dreamweaver is sort of giving it a hint. so that you know it's got a little dotted line, but the browser wouldn't show that. Yeah. So if you were looking at your web page and you said, why isn't this lining up the way I want it to? Go ahead and put one of the first things you'll usually do is put a border on it with usually pixels good enough. You can use more pixels if you want, but a single pixel is usually good enough, and then solid. So while we're on this topic, there's some other kind of cool things you can do with borders. Oh, lost my mouse here. Okay. This used to be a much more complicated topic, but now we can actually round the edges, and you used to have to use a lot of different hacks on different browsers to get it to work correctly. On CSS 3, they've made it a part of the standard because it was such a common thing, but people tend to like the rounded borders, so let's we'll say a 2 pixel solid, and then we remember from the previous videos to separate the CSS attributes. We use a semicolon, and then we'll do border radius, and then we'll set that to 25 pixels, and it's a little tough to see. So let's see if we can see it in the browser a little bit easier. Let me make sure all my code is correct. Hit refresh. Yeah. So you can see we have a rounded, and we'll go over it in a little bit later. But as you can see, this kind of runs right up against the edge of the div. You'd probably want to add some margins and some padding and some other things to it. We'll leave it alone for now. This is just I just wanted to let you know a little bit about borders, because it's a common debugging tool and it's a common thing that you'll be using. So I'll go into one more here, one more property. There's the box shadow is kind of common. So let's erase what we have here. We'll do 5 pixels. Let's do, and then I'll mention, and I'll see how this comes out. That's maybe not the easiest one to show. We'll give it I wanted background color. I guess I'm using some CSS here that we haven't really talked about yet. But I'll go back and explain it here once I get it to work correctly. Okay, so you can see that's like a drop shadow. You'll end up using that one a lot too. Well, maybe not a lot. I'm sure you'll come across it. Let's hop back over here and see what I did. One of the things you can do is there's a background color CSS property, and I set it to yellow, and then this box shadow property. You'll see this is pretty common, so you can see the color, we set it to black. You'll see space separated, you'll see a number of pixels a lot of times, and this is for each, so you're dealing with the box. This is basically each corner that you're dealing with. So either each corner, or if you want to think about it like that, or each the top, bottom, left, and right. And there's other ways to to specify that. This is the common way you'll see, and I'll explain that more in another video. I just to get this example to work correctly had to throw that in there real quick. So, but the basic usage of just using a 1 pixel border we'll need for the next video.